Hello friends, I am OmnusI here in my lair, ready to answer another question as posed by the RPG Brigade Facebook group for RPG a Day. This is a series of questions asked throughout the month of August, to the answers to which we make videos of to help grow out a exposure and love for the role-playing hobby that we've all enjoyed for so long. These videos are just short little responses as guided by these questions. Hopefully you either get some insight into this hobby we enjoy or can smile at some of the experiences that we've had. This question for August 4th is, what is your most memorable NPC? An NPC is a non-player character. In a role-playing game, most of the participants are players. They have a character or a small group of characters that they control. They manage the statistics, the equipment, the abilities that they have to interact with the world around them. If they're a powerful wizard, they probably have a selection of spells. If they're a warrior, they probably have armor and a weapon of some sort. If they're a diplomat, they probably have some serious social skills. And maybe the challenges that come to them are from, an area that they don't have their specialty to, that they have to find other ways around or perhaps grow and develop. Non-player characters, on the other hand, is everybody that those characters might meet. They're monsters that have to be overcome or bypassed. They are the shopkeepers that people might buy from, or people along the streets that they might talk to, gather information from. The depth of the non-player characters is oftentimes a measurement of the depth of the world around you. One's experiences through a day are most often marked by the people that you encounter, good and bad. So, having an extremely memorable NPC can certainly add permanence and richness to your world. And I'm fortunate because I've been game mastering for a long, long time. Not as long as some, but, it's been over 30 years. So I have a huge stable of characters that I can think about and project, and from time to time borrow into new games, characters that I've had in the past. But as far as memorable, there's a couple of characters that I usually would want to be the most memorable. Number one would be the ultimate villains. You want characters with personalities that are complex, that are somebody that the players are going to remember, which makes victory against them or setbacks against them the more memorable, because the characters themselves are memorable and have great meaning. However, the character that I would posit, especially because my players keep referencing this particular character, so I know that it was memorable and stuck in their minds, was a character who was not strictly a villain. He was conflicted. In my Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle, which went all the way from the Crusades, 1100 AD, to the modern age, which ended in 2015, I believe. The characters, of course, had several enemies. I ran the game more as an adventure, more than a brooding darkness, gritty politics, get screwed by the elders again and again and again kind of thing, that a lot of Vampire the Masquerade games are. The characters were all vampires, certainly, but they were smart vampires who didn't let their needs, drinking blood and so on and so forth, they would take care of that off the stage. Something that they're intelligent enough to take care of those needs so that they didn't become an all-consuming hunger that would drive them to do horrible acts. They were responsible vampires. It doesn't happen all the time in those kind of games. And especially because I didn't really want to drive home the personal horror. I wanted to let them have the fun of being a vampire. Some people can't see past the personal horror of it. In my mind, well, you get some really cool abilities, and you have the ability to have a character who starts from this perspective and goes all the way to this perspective. To me, that's fascinating and interesting stuff. So that's what we did, and had a great time of it. Through the course of 2.5 years of playing in this chronicle, taking them from 1100 AD, where my characters were a crusader freshly home from the Crusades. I had a priest. I had, a tradesman, and I had some good characters. And as they became vampires, they made the humans first, which was important to me. They actually had people before they were superhuman characters, and then they turned into vampires and got all these powers and everything, and of course all kinds of webs and things tangling them up because of who their sires were, who turned them into vampires, because of the politics of the story and things. There was things like that. There was structure and there was a framework involved. But then they took their own interests and opportunities as they arose and, evolved out the storyline. They started in London. Eventually they ran afoul of a prince because of circumstances that were mostly their own fault. And they were incapacitated, staked. In Vampire the Masquerade, if you have a vampires stake through the heart, kills them. It doesn't kill them in this game. It only, puts them to sleep, basically. And when they next woke up, they were in Venice. They were shipped away. So they woke up in Venice and got to experience the Renaissance. And they had a lot of fun with that. And one of the things that they found out is that there are some very powerful vampires in Venice. And one of the ones they found out that they really didn't want to cross was named Mad Jack. And if my players are watching this, they're immediately going to get a cold shiver down the back of their neck. Because Mad Jack was, he considered himself the king of the city, not the prince, as the supreme vampires are usually called in the cities. He was the king. He knew everything and controlled everything, and he was powerful enough that most people did not want to mess with him. The problem was the party just kind of assumed, because he was very erratic and unreliable, that he was of a particular sect of vampires, clan called the Malkavians, who were all afflicted with madness. And their usual assumption when they find somebody who is a vampire and whacked out of their mind is that they're Malkavians. That's their trademark. The fun thing was, he wasn't. As they eventually found out, he actually was a vampire associated with the ruling class called the Ventru. But something happened and drove him insane. So he had a wide range of powers and abilities that didn't quite make sense. They came across him, and he just haughtily, kind of swept them up a bit. And they learned, because they don't generally like not having control. They don't like that level of, whimsy is probably not the right word, but kind of a mad approach to exist. That's anathema to them. They don't like that. So they learn to really, really despise Mad Jack, despite the fact that they interested him. He was personally interested in the welfare of their group. He wasn't an antagonist for the most part. That kind of changed on the St. Patrick's Day episode. Now, I've been running these games for a long time, and I have some habits and I have some traditions. One of them is I like celebrating holidays. I like celebrating birthdays. If you have a birthday and you're at my game, well, I'm not going to buy you a birthday present, odds are. But I will probably give you some unique item in the game that I crafted for you for the betterment and improvement of your character, something that you can enjoy. It may not be, something painfully obvious. Sometimes it might be subtle, but it'll be something that'll enrich your character. For the holidays, I have a poem called The Legend of Santa Orc that reads like the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which I generally read for our Christmas session. We have a potluck at the game, and I oftentimes give out a magical item or a set of magical items to the players as a Christmas present. Halloween, usually brings some sort of a horror theme to the game, often, themed into and woven into the storyline. Usually the bad things ramp up and the players have to deal with it. Sometimes it's a threat to something their characters care about strongly, or maybe it's just some really nasty thing just came up that they have to deal with. But for St. Patrick's Day, that's my special. For many people, it's a throwaway holiday. Some people, it's just an excuse to get drunk. My excuse to play with leprechauns. I love leprechauns. So much magical power, so hard to take them seriously. My players have learned to either love or hate St. Patrick's Day on my game because leprechauns have a certain level of whimsy to them as well. So, the players were particularly stung by some antics of Mad Jack. So Mad Jack basically stole a barge full of leprechaun gold and gave it to the players. The players roll up and they're like, oh my god, he gave us a fortune in gold! This is wonderful, we'll all have as much wealth as we could possibly handle. And then everybody else found out that they had a barge full of leprechaun gold, which led to a huge battle between the Fae. A group of elven lancers appeared. The leprechauns came back, they wanted their gold back. Some vampires came up and some werewolves came up. It was a huge, glorious fight in the Bay of Venice. All up and down the harbor. It was tremendous. And they were so mad at Mad Jack. Despite the fact that the leprechauns in the end realized that they had been played and forgave them. The leprechauns got their gold back and they got some nice trinkets for it. Generally the players end up better off than not, although oftentimes the few bad rolls, it's a time to kind of smile and wink and do something that's maybe slightly humiliating to the player character, but never with any lasting permanent effects. It's a celebration of sorts. So they did fine with the leprechauns. The leprechauns actually gave some of those vampires, those brooding, serious vampires, the ability to get drunk for a night and just kind of have a good old tie-up. It was entertaining. Some say it's tweaking the noses of my players a little bit, but honestly I think overall they would admit they generally have fun with the experience, especially when it brings a bit of levity to an otherwise overbearing and brooding game. Mad Jack was the vehicle for that particular story, but there were several others, and as they started to unravel his story, sometimes I think it actually became more important to them than some of the politics in Venice itself. It wasn't a game of serious politics and such, but they did have to deal with a few things here and there about who the prince was, and eventually their characters got to be pretty powerful representatives within the vampire society. And, they did have responsibilities there too. But Mad Jack is something that they remember. Every single one of them who played in that will remember Mad Jack for some time. And that's why I would put him as my most memorable NPC right now. But there's a lot of time left ahead. The next most memorable NPC might be just ahead. I don't know. We'll see. But I am OmnusI, thanking you once more for joining me here in the lair, and hope you enjoyed listening to me wax enthusiastically about my character. He was a lot of fun. He will not be brought back into any other game that I can imagine, although he may inspire several others. I did enjoy that period. So, thank you again. I look forward to seeing you the next time I answer one of these questions here in the Lair of OmnusI. I hope you have many exciting adventures yourselves in your lives. So, farewell.